Well, I'm going to test something on this channel, so if you like this, be sure to drop a comment in the comments section because that will help others see it. And that is a little bit of some unknown, potentially, facts about General Motors and the auto industry, in that it also had ties to other industries. More specifically, I'm going to talk a little bit about Frigidaire, the General Motors division that they owned until 1979 when it was sold to White Consolidated Industries. And I think Frigidaire is really an interesting story because they made not only the air conditioning compressors that were on vehicles, like that beautiful A6 air conditioning compressor, they also made home appliances like refrigerators and, as you're going to see here, washing machines. Now, the refrigerators, I will say, were generally beautifully designed, very reliable. We had a 1950s era Frigidaire refrigerator in a cottage as I was growing up all the way into the 2000s, and it ran beautifully until my father decided to puncture a refrigerant line. And then that was the end of that refrigerator. But it was amazing for how quiet it operated. You did not hear it at all. It didn't, I don't think, even have a fan on the compressor. At least you couldn't hear it. It was inaudible. But today we're going to talk a little bit about washing machines because this is an area where I think Frigidaire had a unique technology, and, well, it's different, as you're going to see in a video clip of how these washing machines work. But first, a little bit about the Frigidaire division. It was actually founded in Fort Wayne, Indiana, as the Guardian Refrigeration Company in 1916. And General Motors began its affiliation with Frigidaire just a few years later when GM founder William C. Durant invested in the company, and GM would eventually buy it. So GM's affiliation with Frigidaire went all the way back to the teens, and that was effectively the starting point for the relationship with Frigidaire. Now, along the way, and particularly when it came to washing machines, Frigidaire claimed a number of firsts, one of which was this unique JetCone agitator that by this point, a lot of washers would have agitators with side-to-side movement where they would move counterclockwise and counterclockwise back and forth. But Frigidaire generally took a different approach with an agitator that moved up and down. And it sounds weird at first, but it was actually proven in a number of independent third-party tests that it washed the clothes in a better manner. It's kind of dragging them down toward the bottom of the tub and then scrubbing them. I shouldn't really even say scrubbing them. It's just kind of beating them up, if you will, and beating the dirt out of them. And then they recirculate, and the setup works very well. If you're going to see here in a video a few of these washing machines working, and you'll notice how much the clothes actually tumble in the washer. Unlike today, where these new high-efficiency washers, it's like you could barely get enough water in them to do anything, and then the agitators just move back and forth, very slowly. I would say rather unimpressively compared to this with the full wash tub and then the agitator that is really doing its job when it comes to cleaning the clothes. Now, Frigidaire would stick with this style of agitator for many, many years, all the way through to the end when they were sold to White Consolidated Industries, and then White would kind of sunset this design in favor of one that they already had. White owned Westinghouse, and Westinghouse agitators were a different style. And so the typical Frigidaire, which by then was the JetCone washer, they had revised it and patented it around 1964, I want to say, so that water would flow up through the base of the agitator and then out the tops. It was an even better design than the early ones. And for whatever reason, perhaps the mechanism was more expensive. White Westinghouse would just sunset that style of washer. Now, Frigidaire claimed a number of firsts when it came to washing machines, interestingly, including being the first washer to employ a timer. Now, remember that before this, you often had washers that had a tub for washing the clothes and then a tub for drying the clothes, and there wasn't a timer. You just kind of had to know when you wanted to take the clothes out and then put the clothes, take them out of the wash bin and put them in, well, it wasn't really a dryer. It was kind of a spinning mechanism at that point. There wasn't heated drying early on. And Frigidaire made this much more simple for the average person to use with that timer. Now, Frigidaire washers are typically named by the function. There was the Unimatic, the Multimatic, the Rollermatic, and then there was the 118 washer, which had an 18-pound capacity. Pretty big capacity for back in the day when it comes to washers. And they had a couple unique features even aside from the agitation mechanism, which, as I said, was this up and down mechanism as opposed to the more traditional oscillating type. And that included a very high RPM spin cycle. Some of these Frigidaire's washers, the spin cycle gets to over 1,000 RPM, like 1,100 RPM. And that's on the early models that were around, I believe, from 1947 through the 1950s. That's pretty crazy, 1,000, 1,100 RPM spin cycle. Well, I guess it dried your clothes really well. You have to imagine back at this point that not everybody had a clothes dryer. So it was also super important for the washer to spin at high speed to release a lot of the water that was in the clothes. And then a lot of people would have clotheslines in their basement or outside where they would hang up the clothes to dry until the automatic dryers became increasingly popular. But in any case, I thought this was an interesting tidbit about General Motors history. I can do more on this. I actually think some of these old mechanisms are super cool. It's amazing that these washers are still around today. They're still functioning. You know, now your washer dryer lasts, I don't know, 5 years. Maybe you're lucky if you get 10 years out of it before you have a major problem. We've already replaced some components on our washer dryer, and now they're almost not serviceable relative to how serviceable these old ones were. You could take the lid off easily. You could change belts if you had to. Some of these Frigidaire washers don't even have belts. That was a great feature about them. But wait till you see the mechanism for how this agitator goes up and down on this 1970s era Frigidaire that I'm going to show. It's got like this little plunger that it pushes the agitator up and down on a wobbly eccentric that spins. It's fascinating and also brilliant at the same time, I have to say. So let me know if you like some of these other features. GM had a lot of other divisions, and they produced interesting products like the electromotive division too, with its trains. And we can discuss this in more detail, but I thought I'd just float this out as a trial balloon, see if anybody really enjoys this as much as I do. And if you do, like I said, be sure to comment and like, because that'll just help it get served up to more people, and I would really appreciate it. Let's now close out with a few videos of some of these Frigidaire washers washing the clothes so you could see. We'll start with a JetCone washer from the early 1970s, and you could see the mechanism a bit better. I'll close out with this final picture. I love this late 60s era Frigidaire where they have the window in the top so you can actually see the JetCone agitator working. I don't know of another washer that I've seen that had that from the factory, but they were proud of their mechanism, and rightfully so. It did wash the clothes very well, although maybe it, was one where sometimes the clothes would get caught under the agitator if you didn't have, let's say, like ladies' undergarments bagged appropriately. If you just left them loose, that was not a recipe for success in one of these Frigidaires. But they did kind of gently agitate despite the way that the mechanism appears that it's beating up clothes. There weren't any fins on it. It just kind of pulled the clothes down with the water flow and was a brilliant design. So let's take a look at some videos of these washers working. And here's the washer fill cycle. You'll notice it's spraying water from all around the basin as opposed to some of the other washers of the time just sprayed from a particular location. And you can also see that lint filter that's up there at the top. You'll notice when the washer starts up that water flows through that. That's circulating water, so that helps trap the lint. And it's very easy to remove that lint filter, and you don't forget about it, unlike the ones that are underneath the top of the central oscillating agitators that many people don't even know that they have. So here we'll watch this fill up for a few more seconds, and then it's going to start the wash cycle. And pay attention to, there we go, pay attention to the agitator. Now, people laugh at this agitator, but look at how it's tumbling those clothes and the towels. You definitely don't get that with a modern washer that fills up like a quarter of the way with water and then twists and turns maybe once every 5 seconds. So your clothes are getting clean with this vintage Frigidaire washer. So we'll watch here for a few more seconds, and then you'll see the crazy mechanism at the bottom of this Frigidaire washer that makes this agitator operate. And here it is. Take a look at this thing. It's like a spinning motor that's got an eccentric and then this arm that pushes the agitator up and down repeatedly, as you can see there. I have never seen something quite like this. It's pretty fascinating. I would guess that that's a little catch basin at the bottom there in case some water leaks past the mechanism. But as you can see, it's dry in this particular video. But what do you think? This is kind of a wacky mechanism to operate this agitator, but it works clearly, and it's tumbling the clothes up top. We'll watch it for a few more seconds here. And pan back to the top of this washer. Notice there's also not a safety switch on this. This is before anybody cared about safety, I guess. So you can open the door on your washer and add clothes back in. The lid doesn't lock. Oh, I hate the lid lock feature on so many of these top-loading washers. And now let's take a brief look at this 630 RPM spin cycle. So imagine this thing is going to end up spinning as fast as an engine at idle. That's how fast this is going to spin. Obviously, it has to drain the water first before it gets to that, but pretty amazing. And as I mentioned, some of the earlier Frigidaire washers will even get up north of 1,000 RPM for the spin cycle. So we'll cut to this at the end of the spin cycle before it breaks the tub. And there you go. Take a look at that speed on this particular spin cycle. And now it's going to slow it down. Look how fast it also slows it down. That's it. And now we'll close out with a commercial for the Frigidaire washer that you just saw. Thanks again for watching. If you enjoyed this, be sure to put a comment in the comment section and like the video.
The best-selling brand's best washer has an agitator that moves back and forth. Frigidaire washers have an agitator that moves up and down. Their agitator works hard. Frigidaire's works harder. Their washer gets clothes clean, but independent laboratory tests prove Frigidaire washers get clothes cleaner. Frigidaire. All our JetCone washers clean better than their best washer. Frigidaire, engineered by General Motors.